Welcome to today's show, and today we're going to discuss how you can prioritize self-care as a busy entrepreneur with Dr. Alan Johnson on the Real Estate and Business Mastery Show. And so make sure you stay tuned. It's going to be a fantastic show, and we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Propelio TV is sponsored by Noble Mortgage and Investments, Batchscape Tracing, Think Multifamily, CreativeCashflow.com, and Lifeiner.
All right, welcome everybody, and today we're gonna have an amazing guest. And before we bring him on stage, one thing that I like to say, and I've actually known Dr. Alan Johnson for a few years now, and he's a clinical psychologist. He graduated from the University of Chicago, and he's been in Texas for the last 5 years now. So we're very lucky to have him here in Texas. And then he's going to talk about obviously self-care and mindfulness and a plethora and major lots of other things. But one of the main things I particularly love about Dr. Johnson is his love and passion for his patients, and not only that, but also for the LGBTQ community. And so I cannot wait for him to be on our show today. And then with that being said, why don't we bring him on the stage? Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
of course.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Gosh. Well, Alan, Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for being here. And by the way, I love you. Look phenomenal.
Thank you.
Per usual.
Yes, very dapper.
Yes, just love it. So I know before we get started, I would love for our viewers to get to know you a little bit more. So tell us a little bit more about your background, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, as you said, I completed my education up in Chicago as the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. So it's right on the Riverwalk, kind of downtown. So I was there for about 4 years. Grew up and was raised in the Midwest, so it's kind of all I knew until I moved here. But been in Texas for 5 years now. I came here specifically for my internship, and it's kind of like a medical program where you kind of get matched wherever you apply. And so I thought it was going to be a 1 year thing, and now I'm going on year 5, year 6. So I think I'll be in Texas for a while now. But as you mentioned, I dabbled with a lot of different populations. I've worked with addiction and recovery. I've worked with the geriatric population in nursing homes. But a lot of my primary passion really has been with the LGBT community. Mm-hmm. While I was at the Chicago school, my concentration was actually called the Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity concentration. So in addition to all my other requirements that I had to do, I wanted to make sure that I got extensive training specifically on LGBT issues and just how to work with the community, additional issues that they may face just being part of being a gender or sexual minority. Mm-hmm. And so since that time, I was in private practice, but no more, but when I was, I'd say a good portion of my clients were LGBT identified. And not that we were even necessarily working on anything attributed to their identity, but that they just wanted a welcoming environment. Unfortunately, we are still in a society that stigmatizes it or thinks it's a choice, and so a lot of my clients were just happy that they could come into the room and not feel judged or criticized in some way. And so now that they can just feel comfortable in their own skin, we can actually address the issues that they wanted to come into therapy for the first place.
Wow, no, I love that, and thank you for doing that. And because it wasn't part of your requirement, right? I really appreciate that you took that step to care about our community, because obviously, that's very dear to my heart, being part of the LGBTQ community. So again, I am so excited to have Dr. Johnson on our show. And then with that being said, I know that we talked about, I guess the title of the show is self-care, right? But oftentimes people don't even know what that means, right? So please enlighten us on what that means.
Absolutely. Well, and as you said, whenever I do clinical interviews with a lot of my new clients, that is one of the questions I'll ask, like, what do you do for self-care? And surprisingly, more often than not, a lot of them go, well, what's that? And so that in itself kind of tells me that you're probably not engaging in a lot of self-care if you don't even know what that means. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes self-care is often just equated with like, oh, making sure I have time for bubble baths or, my favorite TV show. And honestly, those can be things that people do to take care of themselves. But ultimately, self-care is prioritizing ways of maintaining or improving your well-being. The reason why I thought this would be such a great topic for today is, with all your viewers being entrepreneurs, they're probably busy, busy, busy. Like, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, they're probably having 1,000 things they need to take care of on top of just their personal life. So if they're married, have kids, just their own social life. So I can imagine that, they have a lot of responsibilities on their plate, and the idea of, well, I'll get around to taking care of myself when I have the time to do so. Oftentimes we never really do have the time to do so. Usually the taking care of ourselves is the thing that we put last on our list because there's all these other more important things that we have to do. But ultimately, we do have to take care of ourselves because if we run out of steam, then we're not going to be able to do all those things that we want to do. And that's one of my favorite phrases that I try to abide by, but I share with a lot of my clients is you can't pour from an empty cup. And it really is true that if you're not doing something to refill yourself at the end of the day, end of the week, however often it may be, then you're not going to be able to do all these other things that you need to do, especially, again, with the viewers of the show. If they're wanting to take on the world, they're going to make sure that they need to make sure that they have some time to refuel themselves as well. So again, as I mentioned, self-care is simply just being able to purposely take time out of your day or the week, whenever it is, to say, okay, this is my time to recharge. Whether or not that's, you're very busy with socialization, so that time for recharge is just some quiet time by yourself, or putting in some exercise, doing some things that you generally enjoy, whether it's time for the movies or going to a concert, whatever it is that brings you joy and refuels you. I think oftentimes, people know I should eat healthy or I should go to the gym, but if we are trying to incorporate something for self-care that ultimately exhausts us more or we don't enjoy, then that itself isn't going to be self-care. I'm not going to advocate that everyone, go to CrossFit every day of the week because, at the end of the week, if you're exhausted and you hate yourself, well, then that's not good self-care.
Right.
So it really is about saying, okay, how is it that I'm prioritizing myself in this moment, and identifying, having a list of things that you can choose from. So, because again, we may not always have time to go to the gym or take that bubble bath if we want, but I know if I get just a quick walk around the block, or I've set aside time to talk to my partner or my kid, that itself, that even if it's 5 minutes, is something that can be good for me.
Sure.
I think the other thing that often gets confused with self-care, at least that I've noticed with a lot of my clients, is confusing it with selfishness. A lot of the times people go, oh, well, I can't prioritize myself, like, that'd be rude, that'd be selfish, that's me prioritizing myself instead of others, so I can't do that. But again, as I mentioned with the quote about filling up your cup, well, all those things that you want to do, if you really want to be this selfless person, you need a little bit of self-care to be able to do that. And so when I think of self-care, it's kind of on that selfless to selfish spectrum. On the one end, we can give all of ourselves to others, that's our selflessness, or we can be really self-focused and only care about ourselves and it doesn't matter who else gets in the way, and that's selfish. Self-care is that healthy middle. And so I think that difficulty with the other extreme, being selfless, is that it feels good to help and give of ourselves, but if we don't, again, take time to recharge, we're probably going to ultimately resent the people that we're trying to help because we're not getting the rewards in return that the time we put in, or it's not reciprocated, even though maybe there wasn't an explicit agreement that it was supposed to be.
Wow. No, this is amazing. And I know a lot of our viewers can definitely relate to that. Quite frankly, I can relate to this.
Me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because my first thing was like, well, yeah, I mean, self-care and prioritizing yourself and giving you me time sometimes can interfere with having that time spent with, if you have kids, with your kids or with your partner or with your family and whatnot. So I think that that's key, because we're in the industry that we're in, and even life itself, it's really there's a, like, not a requirement, but there is an expectation of us to give, and we give without expecting anything in return, but then we give so much that we're just drained. We're just tired, and then we can't give anymore. We can't even be 100% for ourselves. So yeah, I think that putting yourself first, and then helps you put everybody else in your priority list as well. I wanted to dig into the when we were studying or analyzing what the show was going to be about today. I saw that you mentioned the no list, and doing the no's, because we live in that yes society, the yes to everything. And so I can so relate with that, and then that resentment too, because then when you say yes, or when you try to be the nice person all the time, that can be so draining, so exhausting, and doesn't give you room for anything else. So can you help us with that, or help me with that? Because I'll own it that's
and me too,
me.
please.
Of course.
I say yes to a lot of things, and then I'm like, I'm late, or I'm not doing it right, or my headspace isn't quite there. So.
No, and as you said, I think it's vitally important that we learn those two letters that go together, and it's no. And it's a very simple word, but it's not easy to say. And there's definitely a difference between simple and easy. We all know how to say it, but we don't want to disappoint people, or we like to be that helpful person. So we say yes to the things that people ask us to do, even if they're small or maybe even they're big. We want to be the helper, like you said, give all of ourselves to get the job done. And we live in a society that rewards that. If we say yes to tasks, we might get promoted. We might, get that invite to a certain event that we wanted to go to because our peers or our friends think highly of us. So it feels good to say yes, because if we do a good job, then people probably speak well of us. But as you said too, there's the resentment can occur, because if we say yes to so many things, all of a sudden we're staying up till midnight or later trying to finish whatever that task is. And even though that person didn't know all the other things that we were doing when we said yes to it, we resent them for it, even though that wasn't the intention when they asked us to begin with. It really isn't usually someone's intention to burden us, but it's because we said yes that we've burdened ourselves. So being able to know when to say no is really being able to identify what your own limits are. If you already do have such a busy schedule with everything you're doing as an entrepreneur, you have your family, you have your social life. What we're going to talk about today, self-care, that's something that you need to take time for as well. Once you kind of have an idea of, well, these are all the things that are important to me, and someone is asking me to do this additional task, do that general self-assessment to say, okay, do I have the time to afford to do this? If so, feel free to say yes if you'd like, but at the same time, learn to say that no isn't a sentence in itself. You don't have to give an explanation, but simply, if you need to, just say, I would really like to, but let them know, hey, given everything else on my table right now, I just can't help as much as I would, and maybe offer different ways that you can help. So instead of taking on the full task, I'd love to assist, or keep me in mind for the next time around. So you want to kind of say no, but do it so lightly, at least being able to maybe use that as an example.
So I love that you said that. So how can then somebody, you mentioned this self-assessment, right? And going back to the whole self-care. So how can somebody start, realizing what self-care is, right? So I know you said something about, the Chopra, and I'm saying that
right. Yeah, the Chopra Center, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us more about, that technique, and then what you would recommend people do to start prioritizing that.
Yeah, well, the Chopra Center is based off an author, and I'm sure there's many ways that he can describe himself, but he's written many books, and so it's Deepak Chopra, and I might have even butchered his first name, but it's really about ways of living positive living. And so the Chopra Center breaks self-care down into 6 different domains: physical, emotional, mental, social, spiritual, and practical. Wow, glad I got them all. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those within the different houses in themselves, but physical, as it kind of sounds like, is how am I taking care of my physical body? We take our physical body wherever we go. So am I getting the right nutrients from my diet? Am I getting enough rest? How am I doing medically? Like so many people, I hope it's not that many, but many people might not even get a physical to know if there is anything going on, let alone if they are sick, they're not getting the medical help that they need. Emotional, of course, am I too stressed, anxious, depressed? Maybe even there's just some stuff going on in my relationship or my home life that is keeping me from being at on my positive self as well. In regards to mental, it's, in what ways am I keeping myself mentally stimulated? Oftentimes the work that we do is mentally stimulating in itself, but let's say you are, at a desk job crunching numbers, so all you do is stare at an Excel spreadsheet all day. Maybe you're not really stimulated enough that would be beneficial for optimal functioning. So being able to use even apps on your phone like Lumosity or Elevate to kind of stimulate your brain, or doing crosswords rather than kind of just sit in front of the TV at the end of the day. Like, again, it's relaxing, but is it really cognitively stimulating? So that's why that mental piece is important as well. Social, big one. As human beings, we're wired for socialization. So again, sometimes there is a need to prioritize time alone. So I need to recuperate, whether or not, again, watching TV or just sitting in silence, going to the gym. Everyone has their own way that they do their alone time, but also prioritizing socialization. So, again, in my work, a lot of the times my depressed clients, they isolate themselves. And so even when they don't want to, it's socializing that's usually the best thing for them. Spiritual, and that doesn't necessarily need to be religious either, just simply in what way am I connected to something higher than myself. So that could be even your community. If you are giving back, or you are religious, you are attending church, or you're just participating in something larger than yourself, that's a way of self-care as well. And then lastly, practical is just what are some things that I need to get done. And so they're not necessarily the fun things like household chores or getting groceries, but oftentimes that just feels good to check things off your list, to know that, okay, given my list of 50 things I have to do today, knowing that at least the home environment is taken care of, I can either, one, now truly enjoy whatever self-care activity I'm going to do because that's out of the way, or at least you've crossed it off, so then now you can move on to all those other tasks that you want to achieve as well.
Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so I think we're starting to become your patients
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
So,
Yes. It's therapy for us,
Right.
everybody.
So Dr. Johnson, so what do you recommend then? What's step one? What should I, let's say, Elizabeth and I, what should we do to, I know you mentioned some apps. Is there a form, or maybe you go to the shopper center?
Yeah.
What do you recommend for what's first step we should do?
One of the biggest ones, at least kind of going in the order that the Chopra Center has it listed, I don't know if it's in order of importance either, but just how they list it on the website, is just the physical functioning. So again, diet, sleep, and exercise, and particularly sleep and exercise I really want to hit. Most of us know that it's important to kind of be physically active as much as possible, because we have really become for lack of a better term, lazy society. We're sitting on our computers all day, we have our cars to take us everywhere rather than walk around, and so few of us actually get to the gym to exercise. And you don't even need a gym to exercise, but even so, just getting outside of the house. After a long day of work, the idea of going for a jog or lifting weights isn't so appealing. So exercise is a big one. I think it was the American Heart Association recommended, 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. And so that's about 2.5 hours. And so if you think about it, that's about a half hour each day, if I did the math right, or at least a half hour 5 days a week. And so it doesn't seem too difficult, but again, depending on all your priorities, maybe it is because you have work, then you take care of the kids, and then you have to cook dinner, then you clean up, all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock, and if you're prioritizing sleep, don't want to sacrifice sleep to hit to the gym, so I guess I'll give it up today. And so it really is important to incorporate some sort of exercise though, because keeping our bodies physically active is just, it keeps our entire functioning going well too, but particularly in the position that I'm doing now, is working with individuals that are overweight or obese. And I think the most recent stats are 2/3 of the American population are overweight or obese. So there's just a significant need to move. And so when it comes to self-care, it's just being able to move in general. And so ideally, again, the American Heart Association says 150 minutes per week. But if you're currently at 0, just getting off the couch, and let's say you have a pet, and generally you walk 1 block, today you walk 2. That's at least 1 block more than you were doing yesterday. Or let's say you have your partner or your kids walk the pet, you do it instead. You do it instead, or you do it with them. So now you kind of get a 2 for 1. You're exercising and you're probably catching up with someone that's important to you in your family. I think there's also the difficulty between, not difficulty, but then that in itself is the walking the pet is kind of more that spontaneous exercise. So sometimes when we think of exercise, it's the planned one. I need to wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, work out, come back. And so it's hard to always kind of plan it, but if we can, that's great. But trying to find ways that we can do more of that spontaneous exercise too. So in general, if I work on the 3rd floor, I take the elevator, maybe I take the stairs today. or do I park at the back of the parking lot versus the one closest to the door? So maybe even just a couple hundred feet, but that's a couple hundred feet more than I would have anyways. So when I recommend exercise, ideally, yes, it would be good to do maybe some of the more strenuous workouts, whether it's going to the jog, going gym, yoga, the multitude of things that exist today, but simply just being able to change up your routine a little bit. So that way, if you're doing more than you were doing yesterday, you're one step closer to better health. So really, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I love the whole exercise thing because kind of like what you said, right? We and even you said it too. It's we all know we need to do these things, but again, we still don't do it, right? Or we don't do it consistently. And I know that for me personally, that's a goal for this year. And especially being so busy, even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if you're working your 9-to-5 job, it still affects again the majority of the population. So I'm curious to know what got you into this? What got you so passionate about about everything that you're doing? And maybe if you can share your personal experience and like we were saying earlier, maybe around the exercising piece and how you were able to have that mental shift and then be able to say no and then be consistent with the workouts and so on.
Absolutely. Well, and so part of the reason why as a psychologist, I definitely emphasize self-care to begin with because it's something I need to do in my own life with all that I take on emotionally with what my clients present to me. But within self-care, specifically exercise, is I want to say it was 2007 or so. So it's been a good amount of time now. But I was about 80 to 100 pounds bigger than I was now. So for me at that time, I wasn't caring about my diet. I did not exercise at all. I was a swimmer in high school, but once I hit to college, it wasn't important to me at all. So the best exercise I got was walking from my apartment to the bus stop to get to the classes or whatever it might have been. And so I woke up one day and I was like, this isn't for me. Fortunately, when I was still doing my physical checkups, there wasn't any serious health problems at the time, but I was well on my way. And so it was finally just a time for a change. And so I'm glad that you kind of brought this up again because that's one thing when I mentioned exercise is, as I say it, I don't want to make it sound like it's an easy thing to do. Oh, well, just get off the couch and go to the gym. It's not. One, as I just said a second ago, there's a multitude of choices to choose from. So sometimes if someone hasn't exercised before, it's been years or decades since they have, sometimes it's overwhelming to even know, where do I begin? Do I get a gym membership? Do I do yoga? There's CrossFit. Do I just work out around the home, get some dumbbells? Do I go for a jog? And so sometimes we just get overwhelmed by so many choices that we don't do anything at all. And so then again, here we're wanting to do exercise, but don't even know where to begin. So just simply being able to know yourself best, kind of, we do have Google, so kind of search like, okay, would yoga be the right thing for me? Could CrossFit be fun? Would a 5K if I enjoy running and something? So finding out what kind of exercise works best for you. I know the other thing that I struggled with though too is that, okay, I knew that going to a gym was important, but the moment that I went, I didn't know how to do all the exercises, or it was very intimidating to see the other people there that were already fit, or someone that's sprinting on the treadmill and I'm breaking a sweat when it's a walking pace. So that itself can be intimidating. And just sometimes the number of people, like you go to any gym and it's usually packed, especially with the resolutioners. So if you go to the gym yourself and you're not sure what machine to use, and then every machine's already taken, that's going to be discouraging as well. And so for me, it's been a big passion because not only do I want all people that I work with, not just my own clients, but people that are in my life in general to get well, but I personally know that struggle of going, well, why bother? I'm just going to continue doing what I do. I know how to eat pizza and sit on the couch really well, so why don't I just do that instead? But ultimately, having that goal in mind, I want to live a healthy lifestyle. So for me, it's being able to say, okay, what are the goals that I want for myself? And so always keeping them in that forefront of my mind, so when the going gets tough, I have that motivation to continue.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know oftentimes it's not easy to to be vulnerable, and but at the same time, when we become vulnerable, is when we experience the most growth, in our lives, whether it's professional or personally. So thank you for that, Dr. Johnson. And other than that, I know we wanted to discuss a little bit more about mindfulness, and I know there's something around that I loved about, you mentioned with Theodore Roosevelt. Excuse, I'm like, again, I'm from Colombia, so excuse that. But tell us more about the avoiding theories that you have around comparison and all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so one of the many ways to prioritize self-care is self-compassion. Again, so many times, again, as a society, we're always kind of pushed to do better and best. And so, good enough isn't good enough. And so we're always wanting to do more, do better, and if we don't, then we failed. We often put ourselves in a dichotomous functioning. We either succeed or fail, and that's really unfortunate because if we're not going to be 100% all the time, then we do ourselves a disfavor because that's not possible. We can't always give 110% or even just 100. And so it's necessary, like you said, the Theodore Roosevelt quote is, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And so we will always find someone that we can compare ourselves to that's doing better than us. So someone that's making more money or is more fit than us or just looks happier. And so when we do that, it diminishes everything that we've been doing. So I might have actually worked really hard for the job that I have or built a good home, my family, I've had some relationships, whatever it is that you've built up. If you engage in that comparison, all of a sudden, all of that's for naught because, well, I'm not where that person is. So you do yourself a disservice by just engaging in comparison to begin with. I think the biggest inherent flaw with comparison like that to begin with is that we're comparing our insides or what we know about ourselves to other people's outsides, what we perceive. And so we have no idea, just because that our neighbor across the street pulls up in a new car and it's nicer than ours, we don't know anything else that's going on. They could be having issues in their marriage, or maybe they just got laid off and maybe they're compensating with that new car. Who knows? I don't want people to engage in assumption making either, but we are making these assumptions that people are better off than us based on what they're showing to the world. We all know our own stuff as well too, but we probably don't put that out into the general world either. So we're usually putting if we put our best self out there, most likely other people are too. And so recognize that, one, comparison's not going to help us to begin with because we're usually comparing ourselves to someone who's better than us rather than worse off. And also, we don't really know the whole story to begin with. So if we absolutely have to engage in any kind of comparison, I say it's always best to just compare ourselves to ourselves. So where am I at today versus where I was at yesterday, the day before, a week ago, a year ago. So you can always assess, okay, what's going well, what isn't, and what kind of changes can I make? So even if it is that, ideally you want to look back and say, okay, I am progressing. So, weight loss is an easy example. So if I was at 250 and now I'm at 200, great, that's 50 pounds less, I'm on the right path. But even if you do that reflection piece and find out that how I've compared, where I was a year ago or 2 years ago was actually better off than I am now, still not a chance for you to get down on yourself and go, oh, what's wrong with me? Again, you want to avoid that failure mentality, but simply, okay, well, if I was doing well 2 years ago, why was that? What was going well that maybe I can incorporate then? Or what's in my life now that maybe isn't working for me that I can take out? And so if we engage in comparison, I think that's the only one that's really helpful for us to do, is the one against ourselves.
I love that.
Well,
that's a golden nugget right there.
That is amazing. Lots of them. Yeah, because this is something that we don't really talk about in the open. Maybe it's an internal conversation that we have to ourselves, and we tell ourselves, I can do better, I can push myself. And earlier we were discussing about how we say, how I say, I just don't have time. I just don't have time. I do have time. I just don't carve out the time. And so, yeah, it's a task really, and prioritizing the priorities, yes, I think is key here. That's the message for me, because I can put all these million excuses. I'm always on the road. I'm always doing this. I work late sometimes. A, B, C, D. I can just go on and on and on and on. And a lot of people may not know this, but I have rheumatoid arthritis, and so for some time I've had that be kind of like something that like an excuse. I was using that as an excuse for myself. Well, because of my RA and all this, and so then that's why I really don't openly share that, because I don't want that to define me. You'll still see me doing stuff. That doesn't mean I'm completely capacitated. I do have my struggles. I do have my times where I'm limited, but I don't show that to the world. I'm always like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get out of this funk, and if I have the fatigue, if I have a flare, whatever it is I'm going through. So, but it's easy for me to use that as my crutch. And that's not an excuse really. So I thank you for I don't know why you might have shared all that, but
no.
anyhow,
Well, actually, thank you for sharing that.
because we all
amazing.
have a struggle that we don't discuss or we don't share, and so we're always on this. We're in the society where we're like you said, we're doing like the best that we can and showcasing the best, but that's not always what's going on internally.
Absolutely.
So,
well, with that being said, I think it's perfect timing for us to go on a quick break, and then we'll get back into talking a little bit more about sleep and the hygiene around that. So stick around. Make sure that you're commenting, guys, gals. Put your questions out there. Dr. Johnson will make sure to get back to you, and then share the love. So we'll be right back after a short break.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, burr, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
hello and welcome back to our show. Today we are having such an important conversation, something that we don't discuss a lot openly or amongst us entrepreneurs. We're talking about prioritizing self-care and how important it is that you have to put yourself first to be able to serve others and be positive for somebody else in our community. And we left off on a very important note, and as far as carving time out from your schedule to make things happen, to exercise, to eat healthy, and provide nutrition to your body, to your mind, and internally as well. And I wanted to ask Dr. Johnson something about take us to how important it is to breathe and to just disconnect for a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, breathing is such an underrated activity you can do to kind of just take a moment for self-care. You know, in between, let's say you have back-to-back phone calls, rather than hang up and call the next one, putting the phone down and just. And it really is that significant piece too about in through the nose, out through the mouth. You just get a lot more oxygen in itself when you breathe in through the nose as well. And also if you need to, also counting out how long you're doing that breath is too. So 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, because oftentimes we're so breathing shallow. Like we're staying up here in the chest really quick as we're talking, walking. But if we take a really deep breath, we actually get into our diaphragm. We're giving our body the more oxygen than it needs, but also at the same time, we're also telling ourselves like, okay, I've taken, especially if we do 5 seconds in, I've given myself 10 seconds. That might have been 10 seconds more that you didn't have if you were just going to pick up that phone call and make the next one or go from one meeting to the next. So, I mean, it's a great self-care activity in itself, but it's also a great way to just kind of calm your nerves. So if something is coming up, okay, I'm going to let that out really quick and get back on track. And it's also a great way to pause if you are having a heated conversation with someone. I find myself doing that same thing too, where someone might say something and I'm triggered to have a thought that I want to say, but it's probably not the best one too. So, okay, now I have something better that I'm going to say that'll probably help this conversation rather than worsen it. So yeah, breathing absolutely is a great technique that you can do on the spot. You don't need any special tools other than your own lungs.
Debbie and I are part of this coaching program, which we'll later discuss on another conversation. But when we do these coaching calls, right at the very beginning, that's the first exercise that they tell us. Okay, we're going to take a couple of minutes and just breathe. Close your eyes first. Breathe in, breathe out. And I can already feel just even the tension from my head is just, it releases, because I don't realize that I'm tense right here. but I am, and I'm like, because I'm rushing to get to this call, making sure I look okay, making all these things, and then I'm like, you're right, I'm not even breathing. I'm shallow breathing. I'm flustered most of the times because I'm running to get on time to this and connecting with all these people, and so those moments of the breathing exercise, it's like, oh my gosh, it like really makes a lot of stuff just kind of go away, and just that lets you be in the present moment. What do you think about that?
No, I think too? I think I need to do it more often.
Yeah, I've been trying to do it more often. I do it with my dog sometimes. I'm like, I tell my dog, like, her name's Lucy. Yeah, and I lay with her, and I just like, so let's just breathe. And so I breathe on her nose, and I just take it in, because it's like dogs have this calming effect too. They're so therapeutic, and they just kind of bring us that hey, present moment, because all they care about is the present moment. They don't care if you said no to them earlier or whatnot. They live in the present, so what better to connect to them? So I just lay there with her, and I just, no noise, no TV, no internet, no podcasting, nothing, just quiet. And I just sit there and breathe with her for a little bit, and it helps so much. It's like even more revitalizing than taking a nap. It's crazy for me to even admit that, because I love naps. So I need them sometimes to recharge. But if I don't have the time to do that, I make the time to sometimes breathe with her, and it helps, especially if I'm working from home.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, because and thanks for validating that. So I definitely need to breathe more often. So now, speaking of breathing, sleeping, right? I know that's one of the things that, there's a lot of research studies out there that talk about what you should do right before you go to sleep, when you wake up, and things that you should have around you or around your bed. So what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Johnson?
Absolutely. Well, I guess before I kind of get into a question for the two of you that I always like to ask is, how often are you, or do you use any technology in the bedroom, whether it's phones, computers, TV?
Yes.
Get some yeses?
Yes,
All of the above.
yes,
all of the above, unfortunately. Sometimes it's like,
not even a foot away from
3 or 4 electronics for me, and then my significant other, he's got 2 or 3 electronics as well, which is terrible.
Yeah. And then same here, with me, with my partner, she's got her phone, and sometimes I tell her, I'm like, no, babe, like, you can't put it like right next to you, and I put it away. But even away, I think even like 12 inches, I don't think that's enough, right? So so please enlighten us on that.
Well, so a lot of what I'm going to share is also took from another presentation. The man's name is Simon Sinek. I think I said his name correctly. He talks about the same thing.
Him.
Yeah. So he says the same thing about how, when the phone is on our vicinity, it's one, we sometimes lack willpower. And so if it's right there, we're going to want to grab it because it's in our vicinity. Just like when there's that bowl of candy in front of you. When the candy's out of sight, out of mind, but when it's just right there in front of you, it's easy to grab. It's the same thing with our phone. If it's within grasp, we're probably going to grab it. And also, again, like I mentioned earlier, if the phone is also next to us, then we're more likely to at least think about it. So I'm not really being attuned to what you guys are saying, because I'm thinking about what I could be doing on my phone. I need to check that email. I want to find out what's on Facebook. I want to see how many likes I got. And so, one, just having the phone, that itself, just in any situation, the bedroom or otherwise, there's some pros and cons to having our phone. But particularly when it comes to technology in the bedroom, a lot of us have heard the term blue light. And really it is just what happens when we have light-emitting devices around us. And during the day, it's not so much of a problem because we're off in rooms with windows, so we see the sun anyway, so we're still on that correct circadian rhythm. However, at night, especially if it's dark out or the room is dark, especially after a long day, our body naturally wants to wind down. But if it's one thing if it's like the TVs and the televisions in the living room versus the bedroom, but if we're in our bedroom, we're trying to relax, but we're on our computer, we're on our phone, we're watching TV, we're keeping this blue light on, and it's suppressing our melatonin, which is the hormone that helps regulate our sleep. So even if I'm out in bed and going, okay, it's 10 o'clock, this is my normal bedtime, I'm ready to go, but then you're on your phone for 10, 15 minutes, maybe an hour, however, we can get sucked into it. All of a sudden, when we put the phone down, our bodies aren't ready to go to sleep because it's like, well, I didn't know it was time for sleep because we had so much of this light. We've tricked our brains into thinking it's still daytime. And so, one, we have the blue light problem to begin with, but 2, doing those things are also going to be cognitive stimulating. So if I'm, watching some TV and, even if it's enjoyable and I'm laughing to it, or I'm going through some Facebook, maybe some things I'm enjoying, maybe other things are irritating me. Either way, whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm stimulated. So at night when we're trying to like wind down, if we put our phone out, turn out the lights, our brain's still going, bouncing around, even though we were like, well, I'm ready to go to bed. So how many of us toss and turn before we fall asleep, especially in that situation? I think the other difficulty too with having technology in the bedroom is particularly when it's work related. So if you are on your phone and you're responding to an email, or you bring a laptop in and you're completing some of that, all of a sudden your bedroom is no longer this conducive environment for sleep. It's become another workspace in the home. So let's say you sent off the email or finished whatever the task is that you need to do. You checked to see how many likes you got on the video posted for whatever it is that you did that day. All of a sudden, you're ready to go to bed, and subconsciously you put in your mind, like, well, this isn't where we relax. We just got done doing work here. You wouldn't sleep at your desk at work, so your brain's kind of treating the same thing, like, oh, I guess I'll go to sleep now, even though you've also kind of just told it that this is where I work. So if at any way possible, really trying to, if you can, remove all technology from the bedroom, whether or not that's no TV, no laptops, no phones. I know sometimes that's difficult for some, or some of us just grew up with TVs in the bedroom, so that's kind of unfathomable. What do you mean no TV in the bedroom? But at the very least, at least 30 minutes before you go to bed, not using it, so that way you've kind of developed that in your brain to say it's bedtime. And so I know one thing that, the reason why I asked about other technology use is the same thing. I was the same way. I had the phone, charger right next to me, and so it was the last thing I used before I went to bed, and it was the first thing I grabbed when I woke up. Problem with that is, again, if I'm using my phone, putting it down, I'm activated before I fall asleep. And sometimes in the morning when I wake up, if the first thing I read is something distressing on Facebook, or I got a work email about something that went wrong, I've started my day off on a bad note. So, one thing my partner's done is actually put the phone in the other room before he goes to bed, because it's even less is accessible, whereas mine's across the room. But even so, I have to make a conscious decision to get out of bed to go to my phone. Whereas now, because it's out of the way, I get up in the morning, go to the bathroom, maybe go to the kitchen. I have to make a conscious decision to go versus just mindlessly grabbing over and there it is. And so that's been helpful just to help me fall asleep, because I'm no longer engaging in technology before bed, but it's also decreasing my access to it as well.
Yeah, the proximity. No, I love that, and thank you for that, because as I mentioned with my partner and I, it's just like, actually she has 2 phones. So, and I used to have 2 phones. I'm like, oh no, but even me, I still keep it. That's the first thing I do. I check my phone, and the last thing I put is just, I'm on my phone, just working or whatever the case might be. So yeah, that's a good one. So for everybody out there, let's try that next time.
Yes.
Put your phones out of the room.
Yeah.
So.
And it's funny too, again, referring back to the talk with Simon Sinek, sometimes the bulk to that is, well, I use my phone for my alarm clock. I can't do that. And he makes the comment, he's like, go buy an alarm clock. They're like $8 or something.
Sure.
And so, but depending on the technology used in your home, I have an Alexa in the bedroom. And so before I go to bed at the night, I tell her, hey, set an alarm for 6:30 a.m. So now my phone is across the room. So when I'm ready for bed, well, one, I've already stopped using it so much time before. I don't just plug it in and go to bed, because even that itself is still kind of activating. I know that I put my phone down and do my bedtime routine. That's another important thing for sleep hygiene, is kind of doing the same thing to tell your body it's ready for bed. Brush your teeth, wash your face, get your clothes out for tomorrow, whatever that routine is for you. So for me, it's the phone is put down. I haven't used it for so much time, so I'm not activating my brain. I've gone into the routine to tell myself ready for bed. Now I lay down, and although it would be nice to use my phone like it had been for my alarm clock, I just say, Alexa, set the alarm for 6:30. The alarm's set for 6:30. Worst case, if I didn't have an Alexa, I too would probably go get the alarm clock that you can get from Target or Walmart or wherever, because since having my phone away from the room, I've already noticed just big improvements in my sleep.
Absolutely. Wow. I love that habit that you have in the morning, that you don't grab your phone immediately upon waking, because that definitely sets the tonality for the day. So I love that your routine is get up, go to the bathroom, do your thing, brush your teeth, wash your face, and then do your coffee or whatever, juice, whatever it is that you do, and then grab your phone, because it's like we live in that time now where it's everything is the phone, like, right before bed, right upon waking. And I myself try not to grab my phone as soon as I open my eyes, because it's a huge distraction. Whether if it's you're only grabbing it to read an affirmation of the day, or everything else that's involved with all the lights, the blinking, because you have the purple light for this, the green light for that, the blue light for this. So whatever light is blinking at that time, you're like, oh, well, I have other things. So your mind easily gets distracted from your routine. So yeah, I really, really, really like that. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna practice that more.
And you know, and that reminds me. So Hal Elrod, he wrote the Miracle Morning.
Yes.
And then that's something that I started practicing. And he calls these things savers. And he talks about how your first hour, as soon as you wake up, is the most important hour of your day. And it basically goes into silence and affirmations and visualizations, exercise. Savers, where am I at? So savers, exercise, scribing, and he talks about that in the book is don't use the phone, and then after that 1 hour, then you focus on that electronic, you know, obsession that we all have nowadays.
Absolutely.
So now, Dr. Johnson, another thing that I loved about some of the things that you've written is the grounding technique, the 5-4-3-2-1. What is that about, and how can we incorporate that into our lives?
Of course. So going back to what you had mentioned earlier about mindfulness being one of the techniques people can do as a way of self-care. And, you know, again, that's a big buzzword that people have used lately. And so, you know, I'm being mindful, I'm engaging in mindfulness. But just like self-care, what's the definition? People don't always know what that means. Sure, I'm being mindful. It means I'm just kind of attuned to what I'm doing, but it's a little bit more than that. Mindfulness is, again, a very purposeful act. I'm paying attention to the here and now, and I'm also doing it without judgment. So oftentimes I could say, oh yeah, well, I'm present, but if I'm having a thought in this present moment, I might be judging myself for having it, or I shouldn't be doing it this way. And that's a big thing, is really paying attention to the shoulds in your life, because that's a big area where we kind of get caught up a lot too. But so mindfulness is just simply, I'm here now and doing what I'm doing. So as I'm talking to you, I'm also not going to think about what I'm going to have for dinner, or, you know, the email that I have to get to in some way. Like, no, I'm present here and now. And so mindfulness is a practice. It's not anything that we accomplish, check it, we're done. It's the fact of always bringing yourself back to the present moment. And so as I'm having this conversation, if I feel that my mind wanders, I catch myself and bring myself back to the present moment. I don't criticize myself for having wandered. I just acknowledge that it occurred, and now I'm back. So a way to kind of practice that, like you said, that 5-4-3-2-1 technique, it's a calming technique. I'm not entirely sure who created it. I think it's definitely widely used, particularly for individuals that are experiencing anxiety and want to calm themselves. But it's a great way of just getting into the act of being mindful, is utilizing your 5 senses to bring yourself into the present moment and counting backwards from 5 to 1. So initially it's just, well, what are 5 things I can see? So I can see my shoes, I can see this desk, I can see this chair. So, and, you know, if you want to just simply name the 5 things, you can. But again, another way to be mindful is you can even go more in depth to it. So I see this black leather chair, I see this, you know, cold stone floor. And so in those moments, I'm, again, being very focused on what it is I'm seeing. And then 4 things that, you know, I can hear, and whether or not it's the fan running, my own voice, or, you know, water trickling down the sink somewhere. And so being mindful of that as well too. 3 things that you can touch. So whether or not, again, I'm touching the chair, I can feel the fabric of my pants. You know, if there's a water glass, you can touch that as well too. And then 2 things that I can smell, whether or not that's your own perfume or cologne, or maybe there's an aroma from the kitchen. So just being able to kind of interact with that. And then taste, which, you know, in the moment, maybe there isn't something lingering from anything you might have had earlier in the day, but, you know, pop in a piece of gum or pop in a Tic Tac and taste the flavor of that. And if you're able to kind of do that 5-4-3-2-1 technique, however long that takes, even just the amount that I've taken to describe it to you guys, I was fully attuned that entire time. And so I wasn't thinking about what happened yesterday, again, what I'm going to do after this show. I was really focused on my 5 senses and being very attuned to what those were. And the reason why, again, that's a self-care technique is that oftentimes we do get caught up on all we have to do. So I'm living in the future. I have to send that email. I have to close that deal. I have to call that person back. Or we're focused on what I did wrong. I should have said this better. I could have done that. Regrets from yesterday or 10 years ago. And so if we can even just give ourselves that 5-4-3-2-1 technique, and it takes 10 seconds or a minute, however long, that's amount of time that you were living in the present versus the past or the future.
Wow.
That's huge.
Man,
Yeah.
that sounds really tough to do.
Yes, it does, because I don't live like fully in regret, but I do regret sometimes, like if I did something earlier a mistake that I make, I have that in my mind and I keep saying it. I messed up there, I messed up there, I messed up there. And then later I forget. But I really, I grill that in my mind and I need to stop doing that. So I'm going to definitely apply that technique, that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because I definitely think I would be kinder to myself if I do that.
Absolutely. Well, and as you said there too, if it was something earlier in the day or something we regret from 10 years ago, that mindful technique is being able to, again, to acknowledge this has occurred. Mindfulness isn't that we have to like it. I may not like that I messed up, or I may not like that that person got the promotion and I didn't, but I acknowledge it and I accepted it. Because mindfulness, a big part of it is also acceptance. Acceptance for what is. I may not like that it's raining outside, but I have to accept it. I don't like it, but it is what it is. Same thing with our thoughts. I don't like that I messed up or something didn't occur, but I value myself more to be focused on the present moment. And so instead of getting down on myself for what I could have done or should have said, instead I'm going to say, yep, I acknowledge that it occurred. I have to accept it for what it is. And now what am I going to do in this present moment going forward to achieve the goals I want to achieve? So it's always bringing yourself back to the present moment to go, okay, that's said and done. If reparations have to be made, okay, you go and do that later on, but say, I'm here right now, I'm not there anymore, so I value myself in this present moment to do what I need to do.
Wow, love it.
I love
Thank
that.
you, Dr. Johnson.
Yes.
And with that, let's go on a quick break. And guys, make sure that you're commenting, sharing, give us some love. And if we don't get back to your questions, then again, we'll get back to you later on. And we'll be right back after the short break.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, burr, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
All right, welcome everyone, and we have Dr. Johnson here today sharing some phenomenal, mind-blowing, stuff about being mindfulness and be mindful and self-care and sleep hygiene and everything that we should care about first. It's kind of like in real estate, right? When we do our deals and even when people are starting to save money, Warren Buffett says, pay yourself first. And then you go on and you continue paying on your debt or whatever else. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's let's take care of ourselves first, and then we can take care of everyone else that we care about. So, Dr. Johnson, we've talked again a lot about all these different techniques, and thank you for sharing all these things. So, and you mentioned earlier a couple of different apps, like Calm and Headspace and stuff like that. So, what do you personally use to keep yourself accountable, to being mindful, and to make sure that you're taking care of your self-care and so on?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and you named two of the big ones. Calm and Headspace are probably the most well-known well-being apps that are out there. And in general, why I mentioned apps is just that, again, we are so technology heavy that we carry our phone wherever we go now. I think children, young as 6 have phones now. So, everyone has it. So everything that I've already talked about so far today, incorporating, an adequate number of sleep, trying to incorporate exercise, that does take, I have to plan my schedule around it. And rightly so, it's for your benefit, but, it's going to take a little bit more effort than, I have 30 seconds to spare. Let me take out Headspace and see which one, or both, but Calm has, quick 15, 30-second meditations where you can just breathe along with it, or you can, hear meditation, both of them, as well as others that can kind of have meditations to help you fall asleep. So something easily accessible. Most of them are free. So for those individuals that really are on the go, and I don't have time to make that 30 minutes each day to go to the gym, but I do have a minute really quickly between meetings to calm myself because the last one was heated and I want to make sure I bring myself into the space, or I'm in my car after work and before I go into the home, I want to make sure that I'm my best self, open up an app and there you go. You know, there's even some podcasts that people can listen to. So if you happen to have a longer commute, recently NPR released one. Fortunately, I'm blanking on the name right now, but I mean, in general, there's so many podcasts, not just NPR, of course, that talk about well-being and mindfulness and self-care. So, you know, you can pick up a lot of that just from listening to it on the way home. You know, even if it's a short commute, if you've taken that 5-10 minutes to listen to something about positive living, taking time for yourself, rather than sitting in the car for 10 minutes thinking about, you know, how angry your coworker made you feel or how you lost that deal or whatever it was that, you know, might be infuriating you, you've calmed yourself so that way you bring your best self into that next experience. And for me, that's one thing that I've definitely tried to incorporate is whenever I'm trying to transition from environment. So I've had a long work day and I want to make sure that my full self is present with my partner when I come home. I have that wind down routine. So I'm not going to, well, I shouldn't be on my phone and driving anyways, that's not necessarily safe, but I'm not going to want to, you know, respond to the text to my coworkers or check my email. That's put away. I'm going to listen to music that I enjoy or a podcast. So that way, by the time I'm home, I've really decompressed. So I'm not just necessarily going from door to door and my partner's getting half or less than myself. And so I encourage, again, all the viewers as well to find whatever that routine is for them, whether or not it is I've made time to go to the gym after work, great, or I just have a minute. That's still, again, one more minute that you're devoting to yourself that you didn't have maybe yesterday.
Wow. No, thank you for that. And so, Dr. Johnson, and besides all the amazing things that you're doing for the community, I know you're going to be, you mentioned possibly writing a book, so hopefully you will. And I think Elizabeth mentioned earlier, hopefully, you know, we asked you if you had a podcast. Unfortunately, you don't.
I do not.
But we look forward to getting the news, and I think it'll be phenomenal. Just and even for our viewers out there, I think that's definitely something that most of us
Absolutely
are in need of big time. So, but besides that, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah. Well, again, this whole segment being about self-care, I do try to prioritize it as much as I do. And so I'm a big movie buff, and so I try to go to the movie theater as often as I can.
Really?
So
What's your favorite movie?
As embarrassing it is, my favorite film is actually a kid's film. It's How to Train Your Dragon. It's if you haven't seen it, it's absolutely
Love
adorable. I've seen 1 through 3. The third one actually came out on my birthday, so that's what I did for my birthday. I'm an adult who went to a cartoon film, but my favorite genre is actually horror films, though, too. So I mean,
Me too.
Yeah. So for me, like I try to go to the theater at least once a week if I can. You know, that's not always possible. Again,
Amazing.
we all have time constraints. So movies are a big way I try to decompress. So I if not once a week, every other, and definitely once a month. And then again, I mentioned the exercise. I went from, as I mentioned earlier, someone who is overweight and never went to the gym to now that's a priority and something I enjoy. I like to do 5Ks. I do a lot of obstacle courses like the Savage Race or Tough Mudder. So just being physically active. What was once a chore in the very beginning, I've actually now conditioned myself to really enjoy it. If I don't get my weekly run in, I'm actually kind of depressed that I didn't do it. Whereas if you told myself that in 2007 that you're going to enjoy running someday, I would have said that you're crazy. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, I just watched that movie, the How to Train a Dragon, right? I watched it with my partner, and but I saw the second one, and I've never seen the first one, but I absolutely loved it. But my favorite movie is Grease.
Yeah.
You
It's a good
know?
Oh
one.
my
Come on.
gosh.
Come on.
Yeah, I love Grease.
An
yes.
oldie but a goodie.
Yes, absolutely.
What's your favorite movie?
Absolutely. You know, I have several, but oh my gosh, that movie that Matt Damon did with their very first movie, him and Ben Affleck with. Yes, Good Will Hunting. I love
great.
that movie. Good Will Hunting, so good. I think my favorite scene is when the therapist, oh gosh, Robin Williams, he tells Matt Damon, whatever happened, if you haven't seen it, I mean, I'm sure almost everyone has seen it, that it's not your
It's not your fault.
That was
So powerful.
huge. It's like, wow, yeah, absolutely, just amazing. Yeah.
Okay, well,
I suggest that you go back and watch
it.
It's such a good movie.
Great film, yes.
Right? Yes. And of course, I like that whole do you like apples? How about these? Do you like? You remember when Matt Damon put that? I mean, there's so goofy. I know it has nothing to do with anything. But do you like apples? How about them apples? And he puts the number of the girl that he got at the bar. It's so cute. But it's such a cute film, and it's deep and it's light and airy. But it's just so many components to it. I love that movie. I've seen it 20 million times.
Well,
awesome.
One thing I want to add right there, you said about it being goofy, and right now the three of us just laughing is. That's one thing that I forgot to mention, but is absolutely crucial to self-care. Make time to laugh. Like if you have a serious job, you're constantly going from one meeting to another, one deal to another, and it's all serious and very little fun. Make time to laugh. Like listen, if you have Sirius Radio, listen to the comedy station. Like when you if you enjoy watching TV, make sure you're watching, the ones that have laughter in it rather than CSI and it's all serious. So make sure you laugh each day, because that in itself is just something that's going to make you feel good rather than kind of wearing a scowl or the weight of the day each time.
Absolutely. No, I know. And actually just recently there was an article about that on LinkedIn on laughter and how really laughter, is kind of like another form of love, right? So without laughter, there's no love. So, but anyway, so with that being said, Dr. Johnson, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience? Anything, and also, how can we reach you? Actually, not. I know how to reach you, but how can our viewers reach you? I don't know if you're taking any clients or anything like that, but yes, just. Yeah.
Well, I'm not actually taking any new clients at the time, but if after today there's any additional questions or any other kind of self-care techniques that you're interested in, they can always find me on Facebook. I have a professional page there. It's just Alan Johnson PsyD, so it's PSYD. It's similar to a PhD. It's just a difference in training, more clinical based versus research. And if you want to send me an email directly, I'm happy to do that as well. It's just alanjohnson.psyd@gmail.com. So I'm happy to field any questions, or again, being my role as a psychologist, if any of your viewers are just interested in any mental health stuff, I can always give them referrals as well, depending if they're in the DFW area. I don't know many referrals outside of that, so but happy to help out in any way that I can. Excellent. But in regards to what you said about kind of final thoughts, as I said, just making sure that you set time aside for self-care. Self-care isn't going to happen. As I kind of started with today, we always think that, okay, when I get around to it, I'm going to do this or do that, but time creeps up on us, and all of a sudden it's midnight, and if we want to prioritize sleep, we need to go to bed versus doing whatever it is that we want to do. So, first and foremost, make time for it, but also don't force yourself to do something that isn't enjoyable either. So as I mentioned, if exercise is important, but if it's going to exhaust you at the end of the day and you don't enjoy it, then make sure that whatever it is that you prioritize is something that you do enjoy and you do benefit from.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Johnson. It's been a pleasure having you. And,
Thank you. Yes. And I think we can probably do like maybe another follow-up segment in the future, because I think as just busy human beings, not just entrepreneurs, just busy human beings, because you said even people that have their jobs. I mean, we're always on the go. We're even like always irritated if there's traffic, if there's somebody that's in front of us that's taking too long in the grocery store, whatever it is, if you're still grocery shopping. But anyhow, so anything that can cause us to be more calm or zen and be able to be kind to ourselves. I think that to me is the takeaway of today, is being kind to yourself.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, thank you everyone for watching. And again, if you did not catch the live, make sure you watch the replay. Feel free to ask any questions as well. I know Dr. Johnson, said he would go back and make sure he answers. And make sure to also subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook. And then thanks again to Propelio, which is a tool of for real estate investors that has you can have MLS comps and pretty soon hopefully driving for dollars application and a bunch of other things. So make sure you check us out. And with that, I think that's about it.
Yes. Okay. And stay tuned for the next episode of the Real Estate Business Mastery Show.
So thanks everyone, and you have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Propelio TV is sponsored by Noble Mortgage and Investments, Batch Skip Tracing, Think Multifamily, CreativeCashflow.com, and Life and Air.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan with Propelio. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. Turn on those notifications and stick around for more. We have tons of content like this all over our channel. So if you want to learn more about real estate investing, stick around, watch Propelio TV, and we'll see you later.